And we are back with the Environmental Sustainability Committee. We're going to be doing two parts. I saw that the agenda was about the carbon credits and then something about Thrive Indy. I don't know what it is, but we're going to talk. I'm really curious of how this whole carbon credit thing is going to be. They only had 3 meetings last year. This is the very first of the year. So let's get to part one.
All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first meeting of the Indianapolis City County Council's Environmental Sustainability Committee of 2024 and of this council term.
Look at him.
We have a lot of
Look at
new members for the committee this term, so we're going to do some discussion of what we've been doing, where we're going, and a little bit of history on the Thrive Indianapolis plan, but also some vision setting briefly right at the very beginning. But before we get there, let's go ahead and do introductions, starting at my left.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Derek Cahill, District 23.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michael Paul Hart, District 20.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilor Mike Dilk, District 24.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilor Jesse Brown, District 13.
Thank you, Chair. Nick Roberts, District 4, Geist and Castleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Carlos Perkins, District 6.
Doctor in ministry. Every time he says doctor, I'm going to bring that up. And at the end of the year, we're going to have ourselves a little compilation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Andy Nielsen, District 14.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brianne Delaney, District 2, and I'm happy to be here today. So, thank you.
No one cares.
And I'm John Barth, Chair of
She's
the
even
committee,
laughing about
representing, Council District 7, which is the
cringe.
Midtown section of Indianapolis. So with the consent of the committee, I'm going to reorganize the agenda today, starting with actually doing it completely in reverse. The committee next steps for 2024, first, carbon credits, second, an overview and status of Thrive Indianapolis, third. So we have consent for that? Consent. Okay, thank you. So for committee next steps, I just want to talk a little bit about the committee in general, and with some new members on the committee, just to give a little history. How we started this was in the last term, we had a commission on environmental sustainability, which was a time-limited commission that had counselors, members of the community, and members of the administration who worked together over a period of time to assess the city's response to climate change and engagement with climate in general, and came up with a sequence of recommendations for what we could do. And the output from the commission essentially became the blueprint for the committee. I know that sounds very bureaucratic, but that actually has some meaning. The output of the commission became the blueprint for this committee. And so one of the recommendations from the commission was that we create a standing committee on environmental sustainability, which is what we did. And then there's a sequence of topics that the commission recommended that we pursue. And so we will continue to do that this year. And if you would like to see the commission report, I can get it to you separately, or it should still be out available online. But one of the vision, or one of the clear vision I set for the committee was that I wanted this to be a really active committee. And
3 times last year. That's how many times they met. So much for being active.
And I wanted to do public policy in public and really take on the challenging issues that we're facing in the city when it comes to climate and the environment, and talk about them in public and think them through in public, and then come up with recommendations for the actions we can take in public. And so the reason why Director Boyd and Deputy Director Colvin are here today is to give you an update on one of the things and one of the actions that the committee recommended that we take. And so let me just quickly walk you through that. So one of the outputs from the commission was, at a high level, to engage with, think about, do more when it comes to the green space in Indianapolis broadly, urban forests more specifically, park space more specifically,
A park is just a park. You don't have to overthink it, pal.
and then narrowly thinking about what we can do to do more funding for parks. And
Wanted more funding for parks. What can we do to get more money to parks?
we spent some time on the commission thinking that issue through, took that work, talked about it during the committee, had several experts come and talk about it, including some
I
folks
know
who
he
are in
keeps
the
yapping
audience
so
today.
boring.
And out of that work, we decided to take our first action, which was a special resolution encouraging the city to continue its important work on supporting urban forests and green space, but very specifically asked that the city engage on, think about, consider a carbon credit program. And we learned about that some cities across the country, including Seattle, Austin,
They're scams. We already know that.
had already taken sort of the first steps here in putting together carbon credit programs. What we learned from the example of Seattle and Austin was that there's a whole certification process you go through. It's not a simple process. It's a meaningful bureaucratic exercise that takes resources and time and energy. And so I'll defer to the director to talk about sort of the work they've done to think that through. But there's a lot of effort that goes into it. And so part of the public policy process is determined is the juice worth the squeeze, essentially, is the
No.
work you do to create a carbon credit program equal to or greater than the amount of time and effort it takes to do it from our city's resources, and also will the outcome of a protected space have the benefit for future generations that we want it to have. So that's essentially what the resolution asked the city to do, and that is in your packet. So if you'd like to read that resolution we passed last term, it's available for you to read. It's here for you to read. But that's an example of wanting to take the roadmap that the commission gave us, wrestle with it, come up with specific recommendations, and then work forward on these policy issues. So that's one. The other issue that was a high priority for me, and that was really the first year of the committee. The second year, we spent a lot of time looking at various issues, but especially looking at recycling and thinking hard about recycling. And so in that case, we did do a deep dive on recycling. I thought long and hard about it. You may know that Indianapolis is the largest city without a comprehensive recycling
Good.
program. And if you're me or another counselor in the room, you can look at the heat map around the city and you can see that the current opt-in recycling program is deeply popular in certain parts of the city. And I certainly
What he's saying is that we're like the largest city that doesn't have a recycling part of our trash program, which is saying it will cost more for trash from the taxpayers if we have automatic recycling. Well, if you want to do recycling, but you shouldn't force people to recycle. Oh, it was really popular in parts of Indianapolis. Yeah, the rich ones, because poor people don't give a shit about recycling. They're just trying to put food on the table and make sure their bills are paid. Sorry, guy that lives in $500,000 home.
hear about it from my constituents. I know others do, and so they
Us
want us
normies
to keep pushing,
can't
keep
care.
pushing about this issue. It's already been a priority for the Hogshead administration. They've been working through it, going through a lot of important assessments and talking to vendors and consultants. And so we went through that exercise last year, but we didn't come up with an action from the committee because the city was so deep in what they were doing. But
It was not affordable.
we're going to continue that work, and that's one of the big priorities for me this year, is to continue that work and to continue our partnership with the administration on figuring out what that's going to look like for us. And so not next month, we're actually going to take next month off since I'll be traveling, but the following month we will re-engage, and one of the topics we will dig into is recycling yet again. So, with all that by way of background, I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker. But before I do, let me pause and just see if anybody has any questions about what we're doing here in this committee, or any questions.
Mike
about,
Dilk's already on his
what we've
phone.
done so far. I know Councilor Hart was with us before, so you might have something you might want to add. But let me just pause and see if there's any questions or comments.
I have a question. This guy. Let's see. Where's the camera? Nope, that guy. Okay, so this guy, or you just use this. This guy. Why is it 2024 and we're still wearing a mask? Anybody? Anybody? No.
It doesn't hurt my feelings, if you know what I mean. Okay, great. Well, then we will proceed with the work, learning about where we are with the carbon credits program, and thanks to you both. I know you've done a lot of work on this, and there was a very thorough and thoughtful article in the IBJ that you were both quoted in that I thought did a great job of summarizing where things are. So let me turn it over to you, Director.
Sure. So thank you for letting us come and give you an update today on the carbon credit program. We've been working really closely with the Office of Sustainability, so I'm not going to present that we've been doing all the work. It's been a partnership also with the Office of Land Stewardship, also in DPW. When we initially started on this road, and we've been feeling our way, like we were looking at a couple of different protocols. One was tree preservation, carbon credit program protocols versus tree planting. For now, as we engage in this pilot effort, we decided to go with the tree preservation
That's what Austin does. Austin, Texas.
protocols. And so we were looking at what acreage in Indy parks is forested and could meet the criteria for City Forest Credits, who is the credit issuer that we'll be working with. They are a nonprofit. They work on projects that are urban. And so they're used to dealing with organizations, entities that have parcels that are not these thousands and thousands of acres, but smaller parcels, and can piece them together and work with folks like us that don't have like huge tracts of land. To that point, though, the first place that we're looking at engaging in this pilot is at Eagle Creek Park, where we do have large tracts of forested land. And so
Isn't Eagle Creek Park like they can't really do anything there? Like, I think why?
we went through a large process of issuing an RFQ to find a partner to help us with this, and then through that process really decided that for this first phase of just figuring out which acreage would qualify, we could do that in-house. When it comes to the next stage of figuring out how we broker and sell the credits, that will be something where we're going to have to look for, issue an RFP and have a consultant work with us on that. But for now, the major step that we did was we went to the park board in December of last year and passed a resolution. Basically, they gave us the okay to move forward with contracting with CFC to engage in this first phase of the process. And we're now looking at finessing the agreement and going back and forth with CFC and our corporate counsel of the city to get an agreement that we all want. So that's where we are.
Can I, let me start with a few questions.
Sure.
So, and I think I have the name wrong. City Carbon Credits, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Forest.
City Forest,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes.
Sorry, CFC.
So CFC. And I met with them a while back and got sort of their review too, but let me kind of talk about what I understand, make sure I got this right. So CFC is a accreditation entity.
The carbon
correct?
registry.
Right. And so they certify tracts of land, whether it be established forests like Eagle Creek or new investments that meet their standards. And then once they, is accreditation the right word? I'm sorry. Once they credit it or determine that you certify it, then they can sell those on our behalf? Or there's another entity that sells them on our behalf?
If we wanted to, this is sort of a question down the road, but they could sell them, but it's like at a national level. If we wanted to do something locally where we had a local broker and we were selling to local corporations and keeping it local, then we would need to find someone else. But we can figure that out later.
Okay.
That's yeah.
And one
be
of the
preferred.
advantages of doing this is
That would actually be preferred, because if this is about a local issue, you should keep all this this money locally instead of having some out-of-state network get fees off of our forest. Carbon credits are dumb anyway. It's a total scam. But it would be nice if the scam kept in house.
because once you get that certification, then there's a commitment to that tract of land for a period of time. It's the period of time that essentially the bonding or the certification exists, and that's the period of time upon which you can sell credits to entities who want to invest in that. Is that correct?
That's the period of time that we would sell, ideally, we would be certifying for, we're going for the 100-year protection. We would be selling the credits, it depends on, so in this first phase, as they're looking at what actually qualifies, there are things about density of the forest can be covered, but also are there things that would preclude development or threats? So if it's in a ravine, it's protected because no one's going to develop there. If it's already got some kind of easement on it, a protection, then it doesn't qualify. So it's going to have to be, it meets several different criteria.
So there's more value to the tract or certain parts of tract depending on its threat of being removed or being developed. Is that correct?
I think that's the key word,
Yeah.
threat.
Yeah.
So we have to document that the lands that we're putting forth are at some level of threat over the next 100-year period, whether that's a sale, a timber harvest, or redevelopment of some type. One would think that Eagle Creek would never be under that threat, but if you look at the value of that property there and all the development occurred around it, it very well could be.
It's probably not going to. Like, you could put legislation in there to keep it as a forest preserve, couldn't you? So, like, no land development could happen, or what he's saying, chopping down trees for some timber harvesting or something. It really sounds like it's it's just fake threat, faux threat, faux threat. And this is just being used as an excuse to try and get some kind of carbon credit program.
And my assumption with Eagle Creek is that would be a good place to start because it's a sound, long-term commitment the city's already made. It might have less value in the market, but it's a good place to start for us to build up our experience and our knowledge and so on.
Exactly.
Okay.
And there may be in the future, definitely like an expansion of the program to other sites.
And what I recall from KIB, they've also explored this, and one of the reasons they wanted to look into it was with all the young trees that they plant, could they start certifying those so that there would be some kind of a revenue stream for them to continue and maintain those trees over a longer period of time than they currently do. Is that a good assessment?
Yeah, so we're looking at maximum for this pilot, maybe 480 acres that we could certify. So as we go through the design process and we really figure out what qualifies and what doesn't, that number will shrink likely. But the number is the $2,800 per acre would be the value.
What? So you have $2,800 an acre at Eagle Creek Park. Hold on, let's just backtrack a little bit. They talked about KIB, and they said, it's like, oh, this would be used as a funding mechanism or some kind of to get funding for the young trees for your carbon credit. Like, this is just another scam. You guys are just proving that you're just using this as a way to make money. It has nothing to do with environment.
We would get credits issued because of the amount of acreage we're looking at. It would be issued over a 5-year period, and then we could sell them as they get issued. So
And so the benefit, as large or small of the amount of revenue that comes in, is that it could be repurposed to specifically support projects in and around those trees in Eagle Creek, right? To support some of the investments that need to be made there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully, it would help fund land stewardship, who does a lot of invasive removal, wetland restoration, native woodland restoration. So that's where ideally for preservation of those areas.
And
Who is this guy?
and does the certification process with CFC require any specific use of the funds that are generated?
I don't think there's, other
Yeah,
than,
I'm not aware.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm not seeing that in our agreement.
And
but
let me
that's
just
later.
Scam.
just one final comment, then we'll go to counselors. So where you are, as you've gone through, you've engaged with CFC, but before we move to the next phase, you want to have a consultant do some. How many? I didn't quite track what the actual next steps would be from where you are.
We execute the agreement, and then we get into the phase where we are specifically designating which of the 480 we would like to have certified can actually be certified. So they have to get analyzed.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, great, thank you for that. And I think Councilor Perkins.
Good afternoon. In terms of costs, you said 480 acres at what's the cost per
About
acre?
2,800 potential revenue.
2,800 per acre?
Yeah, so if we're
Okay.
looking at pie in the sky, maybe over $1 million for revenue.
In terms of benefits to a local entity for purchasing this credit, what are the benefits?
Well, you can, you would purchase carbon credits to offset your carbon footprint. So companies that are trying to be environmentally sustainable, to show sensitivity to that, would do that.
But you're not like growing new trees or anything. This isn't like, hey, I cut down this one tree, so I put up another tree. This is more like preservation than anything, because Eagle Creek can't really expand out Eagle Creek Park can't really expand out anymore. And it's more like, hey, we're going to give you money for polluting the air. This is kind of the gist that I'm getting out of this whole thing right now.
Can I ask one follow-up?
Sure, could I just let me add one comment, is something I learned from KIB and from Visit Indy is that when entities are coming to Indianapolis for big conferences, a lot of times they're looking for opportunities to invest in the community, and sometimes they want to offset the carbon footprint of flying so many people in, and so purchasing a carbon credit is something that they would be looking to do. That's one potential opportunity too. Sorry, please, go ahead.
I just wonder if we're opening a door for entities that have the resources to be able to become more polluters by purchasing credits.
That door is already there. I'll just say that. And
Okay.
so what we're opening the door to is protecting our forests.
It's because you need money. That's all this whole thing is about. Oh, we're gonna have our private jet putting out so much emissions paid, but don't worry, we'll give you like $100,000 in money because it makes us feel better or whatever. I'm kind of wondering if these are are these a tax write-off? I need to find out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Hart.
All right, just a couple of things here. First, just on a question side of it, from a carbon credit perspective, that pertains to some unit of measurement. How many carbon units are per acre? I guess, and just maybe say it another way, if I'm emitting carbon emissions as an organization, how many credits is 1 acre producing, and what's the offset of output?
The question is, if I lay out a giant fart in a room, how much clean air do I have to pay for to get my fart smell out of that room?
The number that CFC gives was 103 credits per acre. And so in terms of the offset, I'm not sure what that conversion is, but I know that I recently flew somewhere, and on each leg of my flight in the itinerary, it told me what my carbon footprint was, and it was very hard to see.
Okay.
So it's out there, people can, but I don't know how that translates into this exact.
Right, I'm sure, right? I
It's
just,
like
the-
$30 per carbon credit.
what I'm looking at is the overall value besides the monetary value, right? I mean, that's one piece of this. If we're looking at 1.3 million at 480 acres at 2,800
Mike
an
Dilk
acre, right?
is
Sure,
just
that's
on his
one thing
phone.
to the city of Indianapolis and the people, but from an environmental sustainability standpoint, what does that actually mean from an offset of carbon? And that is the first question. If it doesn't sound like you know the answer, but I'm
Oh,
interested
how
to
much
know
carbon
that.
is sequestered in each acre? That's part of the analysis,
Yeah,
actually.
it's got a lot to do with the quality of the woods and how many years that you're able to preserve those woods intact. And one of the commitments we're making in this 100-year thing, that we're not going to cut these forests down. Now, you can still have a recreational trail underneath them, but you can't clear them for sports fields or harvest the timber or anything. So as the forest matures over that 100 years, you're gaining more and more carbon being sequestered in those large trees, that native forest.
Okay, so yeah, the only thing I'm trying to get at is, while sitting on this committee, it's important that we see the money, but we also see the impact back to the environment. So just keep going forward, just like to see those numbers. On the second hand, where I'd like to just make the comment, and I see Jeff Stamp back there in the audience and got to greet him on the way in. I had an amazing time learning about hardwood forests over the summer in my district through Jeff and his knowledgeable background. If anybody ever has the opportunity to meet with Jeff, I highly recommend it. You'll absolutely learn something. But what excites me about this is the conservation aspect of all of it, right? Where I know, based on the meetings that I had through Jeff and the people he introduced me to, that there are people in the city of Indianapolis that want to preserve lands of forest. And how can we, as a council, provide that opportunity to the city and give them that opportunity of conservation? Because I don't believe that it exists today in any capacity. So if this is a way to dovetail us into conservation efforts to allow us to then utilize that land for both the benefit of the citizens in Indianapolis, but to the environment, I think that would be a phenomenal way. And I'm excited to see how well the pilot does, so we can see both those measurements that we looked at, but also find a way forward to do more land conservation efforts.
Yeah, great point, Council. Just a quick comment, and we'll go to Councilor Nielsen, is this proof of concept, I think is so important for the reason you described. Part of the work that Mr. Stan has done with IFA is identify possible areas around the city to be preserved, right? And so let's say this proof of concept is successful, then potentially you can take that concept to different locations and have additional revenue for land acquisition and that kind of stuff. So just playing this out long-term and just trying to think strategically, it's not a right now solution, but over time, with the success and the experience that that Parks and their partners are building, we could get to something like that. So I think that's an excellent point.
Here's the problem, though. There's going to be a bunch of loopholes, and they're going to be exposed really quick because this whole this carbon credit scam has been happening for a long time already. And, I decided just to do a little chat GPT. It's not like 100% reliable, but at least it gives me a head start on what I wanted to do. So basically it was, are carbon credits a tax write-off? And it says, carbon credits are not typically considered a tax write-off in the traditional sense. However, they can have implications for taxes depending on how they are used or traded within a business context, which that tells me there's a loophole, which this tells me that if you're going to have designated areas that are for carbon credits themselves, they still have to be maintained somehow. And who's the one? Are you what were they called? The City Forest Credit, which is the global carbon credit and impact certification. Like, who gives them the right? What experience do they have? Is this all fake? Or like, yeah, it's like credit ratings, right? It's like, is there a big enough, like enough people or enough forests that you can say like this person's this one, and like how is it measured? I think this is just a bunch of bullshit personally. Like, how do you tell from one area is cleaner than the other, and do those credits adjust over time and how does it over time? Are there recertification processes? Like, there's just so many questions, not enough answers, but I don't expect too much because this whole department is lame. This whole committee is lame. There's a waste of our resources as usual. I'm getting amped up because I'm tired of seeing my taxpayer money go to crap. And I'm just getting a little tired of it. I mean, this is all bullshit. If you really want to make change and you're so worried about things, then you need to put heavier fines. Actually, I have the perfect idea. If anybody's going to have a private plane, by the way, it's just an idea. Don't bring an umbrella to a brainstorm. If you really want to set the point of how much you care about the environment, then don't have private planes. Or if you're going to, that person, whoever books the plane, they have to fight an MMA fighter. Make it where like it has to be worth it, not some billionaire or some millionaire asshole that says, "Oh, I'm just ruining the air quality because I want to go get somewhere real quick and I don't want to be around commercially." Okay, well, I'll just pay an extra $20,000 on it. Whatever, I can just write it off of my business. You have to make rules for this kind of stuff so there aren't any loopholes. But now I'm just ranting. So continuing.
Well, that segues in nicely because that's my question. So I know we talked about this as a pilot. So, like, what's the timeline in terms of when it is no longer a pilot and it's a up and running program? Like, what I guess to where Chairman Barth was going. When do we have the opportunity to expand? I guess like the pilot shows proof of concept. It's working. We're selling the credits. We understand it. Like, when is it that we can move on to another location?
Is this guy out of his mind? Like, this is what happens when you get so amped up. Like, there's something legitimately wrong with him. Just look into his eyes, all right? And you just ask yourself, we have not even started this thing, and now we're wanting to expand. This is like opening a business, and before you even get done with the paperwork for the bank, you're like, okay, how can I franchise this out? How can we expand the business that we don't even know if it's going to work into multiple areas throughout the country, throughout the world? Dumbass.
I would love to do this as soon as possible, but I think we need to get through the brokerage side and see how those credits sell. The idea of having a locally based program, I think, is one that we need to put some effort behind. So seeing how that works.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow up of just an opportunity, right? If we probably keep it local, we have an opportunity to keep more of that money here than obviously selling it to a brokerage who will probably take a chunk of the fee. So I know this is based on the acreage, or the credits are based on acreage, so does that mean that the smallest unit of land would be an acre that could be preserved? I mean, is that kind of where I'm going? Like, if you have a pocket park that's 1 acre, so you could just capture that?
They are actually I think it's 10 acres is
It's
the
10
is the minimum.
10
Okay.
parcels.
It's 10 parcels. An acre is probably a good rule of thumb to begin.
Okay.
Because you get much less than that. Although you may have some very significant trees in a half acre, I think the acre is basically what it's a good rule of thumb at this point, at a high level.
Okay. Okay.
There are some unique tracts of land out there, or parcels, that we may want to just especially save those because they're so unique. But as a general rule, the acre is a good starting point.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh man, I just thought about how they could totally have a nice loophole. If somebody just plants some trees and then someone's getting $3,000 a month just because they have like 2 trees on 1 acre. I mean, I'm already exposing the loopholes, and I'm just some guy talking shit on a YouTube channel that's running for state office. And I'm already figuring this stuff out in real time. Hey, vote for me, Witty 2024. Let's go.
Let's go to Councilor Roberts first.
Oh boy, I can't wait to hear what this
Boyd
clown has
and
to
Deputy
say.
Director Colvin. One of the points that really hit home to me is just with the amount of natural, forestry in our city, and in particular my district. A lot of the area around Sargent Road, north of Fort Harrison State Park, is, from what I saw from EPA studies, the highest density of forest all over central Indiana, and obviously there's ample benefits to that. The air quality from the EPA study was the highest rated in all of central Indiana, which, as we all know, needs a lot of work citywide, but broadly, I haven't obviously discussed within the constituents, but I was wondering what our capacity is as a city to work on these programs on private property, because almost all of it is privately owned, but also within Fort Harrison State Park too. That's another huge density of forestry. Even though that's not in my district, it's kind of a continuation of the area. What's our capacity to work with private property and also state government for projects like this?
I'm not sure what that looks like for in partnership, because I think we would have to be the owners of the land in order to do that. But as in terms of resources for information, to show how we've done things, to strategize about areas that need to be put under protection, happily we would collaborate. Yeah.
I was gonna say that'd be my assumption, but obviously there's probably other things we can do to help keep it, environmentally safe. And with the state park, of course, that's a state issue. But if we can nudge them to help, keep things in the right direction, I wouldn't assume for the state park there'd be any imminent threats to it. But of course, you never know when things are going to happen. So we have to be very cautious to make sure that all of our parks are preserved. And as we all know, there's not enough parks in Marion County. So we have two huge ones like Eagle Creek and Fort Harrison. We have to really do our best to preserve them as much as possible. So
shut up.
Councilor Brown.
Gosh.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Director Boyd. A couple quick questions. I did think that the IBJ article about this program was really great. I did want to ask some questions because I think there were some open questions in the article about how vendors were selected. I think I remember seeing that there were 3 potential, a local group that I'll admit I'm a member of, like Carbon Neutral Indiana, and so just curious, they're also a one-person operation. I can see 100 good reasons why they wouldn't have been selected, but can you talk at all about the process in selecting a vendor?
I will say we just went with the vendor that we thought had the capacity to do the work. That's the main thing. We're not even engaging that consultant at this time, so we're trying to do most of it in-house. Trying to be respectful of taxpayer dollars and all that.
So whenever you do an RFQ, we follow the purchasing department's protocols. So there's a whole set of rules and guidelines. An evaluation team is set up so it's not one person making the final decision on it, and then there's a set of criteria that they're evaluated. I believe there was like 6 vendors that participated in that proposal, and then the team went through and evaluated them and looked at, there was a set of criteria, I don't have them all remembered, but it was about capacity, skills, diversity, could they handle a project of this size, had they done previous work like that.
Yeah, that all makes perfect sense. Thank you. I similarly wanted to echo Councilor Robertson's hopes that we could eventually, get so far even as to assign some value to a healthy tree in, our city. I know recently in my district, Cecina High School just cut down a bunch of old growth trees to build a football field. It's a beautiful looking football field. It's just down the street for me. I'm glad the kids have a place to play. But part of me, it's like, wow, this is heartbreaking that right now there's no economic benefit to keeping these trees, even though all the science shows how important it is for all of us. So the more we can do as a city to kind of point the way, and even if we're just showing resources and showing, that wasn't even an acre of land, so I don't know that there was an option there, but still just love this pilot program and its chance to kind of start us thinking down that line of thought. So thank you.
It's probably like 2 trees, right? Oh, they had some old growth. It wasn't even on an acre of land.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Appreciate you coming today.
Oh, Jesse Brown, you are such a clown.
And we'll ask you to come back to another update when you have some meaningful next steps. We'd appreciate that. But again, thank you both for your work in this. We really appreciate it. And as I pointed out to Director Boyd, I always love seeing District 7 constituents in the House working hard on behalf of the city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so the carbon credit part is done. Personally, I think what's happening right now is they're just trying to find a way to make some more money and they're using carbon credits as their vehicle of getting there. And whatever we all know it's a scam. Listen, everybody who watches my channel is smart enough to know that this whole thing is a scam. They're postering it as that it's for the environment, but no, they're just signing a forest that it's worth this amount of money in carbon credits. So therefore, um, Ursay can fly his helicopter around, and in return, he will give X amount of money for the forest that will not be cut down, but for preservation. It's stupid. Speaking of stupid, boy, do I gotta talk about this. After the city council meeting, Nick Roberts decided to post on his Twitter saying, "Tonight we had our first Environmental Sustainability Committee meeting of the year. Our agenda discussed many topics, including carbon emissions and the benefits of things like trees." Like, kid, come on. I know you're 23. I know you're with your family. You don't have your own place. Everything's bought and paid for. But did you not learn about the benefits of trees? Come on. Like, this is what you voted for, people. This is what you voted for last year because you thought this kid was smart and responsible when in fact he's just a dope. Shame on you, Indy.